A major shift has happened in communication, enabling communication.
Where do you think what kind of technologies can really be a like a golden thing for Indian Railways?
They are mostly operated out of legacy systems, and what we call legacy. Aspirational world today wants trains to move faster.
Correct.
In a fast moving environment with reliability of data transmission, the two parameters become very important. One is the speed at which communication is supported. You probably would not need a driver to see what is going on in front. And the analogy is again the autonomous cars that you've seen, Teslas of the world that you've seen.
Yeah.
They're most easiest to be implemented on the railway tracks, because on the road two can still cross
Exactly.
each other.
How it is, do you think that it is impacting the country on a national level? And let's say in context of railways or healthcare, whichever you want to touch base on.
On the healthcare infrastructure part, we have had one very famous case recently.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of CyberSuraksha Dialogues, presented by Velox Media. Today, we are joined by Colonel Alok Shankar Pandey, the current GGM and CISO DFCCIL. Colonel Alok, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for giving us your time. We look forward to a very interesting dialogue from here on and trying to dig deeper into, understanding the cybersecurity space, how it is happening in, in the domain that you are currently active in. But at the same time, how you have actually evolved and grown into this role, and after working with so much of different and significant and actually sensitive, enterprises as well, including the Indian Army, right? So welcome again. Just quickly, I think if you can have a little introduction into just to understand your current role into your current organization, and how does a usual day for you looks like. So over to you.
So thank you, and thank you, Velox Media, for giving this platform to me to share my thoughts on this very interesting, challenging, and concurrent subject, because this affects everyone's lives. To your pointed question, what is my day like? It starts with chaos and ends in chaos.
I'm sure.
So the subject, and in your introduction, you told my designation is Group General Manager IT and Chief Information Security Officer. Traditionally, these are contrarian roles.
Indeed.
So there's a conflict which exists in my role itself. It is very unique, but a conflict exists because of something that info security was not thought of as seriously earlier. Traditional organizations do not or did not have an info security role. So when the mandate came to appoint CISOs were appointed amongst available people.
Right.
I would still say my organization is one of those organizations which has chosen to appoint a CISO who I would like to believe understands technology, IT, and the landscape. Many organizations and government has something what I famously call ornamental CISOs, who have no understanding whatsoever of the technology, role, anything. But they are sitting in that space because there is a compliance requirement. So that is how, that much for my introduction.
Great. Thanks for that. Brief introduction and insight as well. Let's quickly get onto the key topics and the places that we have shortlisted for the discussion. Right away, starting from a strategic perspective. Now, you in your past experience, you have handled mission critical telecom and IT projects across decades, right? It's over a decade for you. Now, who do you think and what do you think has changed most in the cyber risk from the old 2G 3D days to today's 5G or IoT driven environment? Where do you see the shift has?
So that's a very great question. And before I answer that question proper, my disclaimer: all views expressed are personal, do not in any manner reflect views of the organization that I've served either in the past or I serve today.
Completely understood.
So when you're talking of this spread of technology over the last 3 decades, basically, when I look at it from 90s to the present, in fact, the fourth decade is running, a major shift has happened in communication, enabling communication.
That's right.
Infrastructure. The communications have moved from what was traditionally analog to what is digital.
Yeah.
So that is one major shift that has happened. The next major shift which has happened is the nature of switching. So earlier the switching was entirely circuit switched. What you call, if two wires make a contact, then and only then something can flow over that
Correct.
medium. Switching changed from circuit switched to packet switched, where there was no physical requirement of
A medium.
wires to make contact.
Yeah.
And packets would come and get sorted like in the traditional sorter way, where you'll find, when depending on which direction it has to go, it keeps putting the incoming packet left, right, left, right. So that is what changed, has brought in a significant change in the way services are being delivered today. Now, in terms of, if I look at the evolution landscape, so the minute packet switched came in, you were somewhere around 3G, 2G plus 3G. This is where you come to that era. And when you talk of higher bit rates and packet switching at that kind of speed, you bring in an element which can be told to switch something in a manner that is not intended to be switched.
That's correct.
So that is where the risk begin at the fundamental level. And this was in the core network. When I come outwards to the user side, the evolution of something called a converged platform.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at your lifestyle 2 decades back, you had a telephone to call.
Right.
You had a pager for messaging. And you had nothing to do with data because there was a PC separate on which internet connection would be there or whatever data. So you had three independent mediums through which
Correct.
three different things were happening.
First
convergence happened when the pager and the telephone merged, and
Yes.
it came somewhere around 2G. The most significant convergence thereafter was of the PC getting converged
into
So now you have a mobile phone which is as powerful as a PC, and it does other things by means of, now it treats it as an app. So something, voice is treated as voice over IP,
Mhm.
message is treated as text. So now the analog speech that was earlier there was only transferred over analog media, and now it gets digitized.
That's right.
And is now switched as a packet. Data was traditionally being switched as a packet. So now everything has become packetized. So there's something called packetization of the entire infrastructure. The minute you have packetization of the entire infrastructure, that fundamental thing that I said, that you have the ability to change what should not have been done, starts right from the user end, goes back to the network. This brings in significant risks.
Yeah.
So convergence, ICTization, and famously one of my bosses, or he was the signal officer in chief, he used to say, he coined a word, ICTEC. ICT, everyone knows, information communication technology. EC was electronic and cyber. So in the world of cyber now, and the electronic world we are probably on the cusp of it, where you will find spectrum becoming more and more accessible to be disrupted. So this transition over last from, and if you have to point out the particular point, maybe somewhere around 2015, when 4G came in. That is where the shift has
transition
happened.
Period.
That is where the shift has happened maximum.
Correct. Really, really interesting take, Alokji. Now, moving on to that itself, as a follow-up question, you can take this. You have worked across technologies, whether it's 5G, IoT, AI, ML, right? Which of the one or more than one technology do you feel will transform a domain like railways, in the coming decade? It's a huge domain. It's a very significant domain for a country like India, where the economy depends on it, by large. So where do you think, what kind of technologies can really be like a golden thing for Indian railways?
So if I look at Indian railways, or for railways in general today, they are mostly operated out of legacy systems. And what we call legacy is a definition which changes from sector to sector.
Mhm.
So let's put it something that is anything which has a life more than, say, a decade. For legacy, because the telecom generations come once in a decade. So 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, they come once in a decade. IT equipment has a shorter life than that. So I'll say anything more than a decade, I'll try and put it as legacy. So traditionally, the infrastructure in the railway ecosystem has been a legacy kind of an infrastructure. Now, all technologies at the end of the day are tools. They're tools to meet an end.
Yeah.
So if I have to look at these set of emerging technologies, I have to see how these tools fit in to the business case and what efficiencies they can bring in at what cost. So these are my trade-offs. So if I look at categorically the technology that you named, so I'll start with 5G, the enabling infrastructure.
Yeah.
Aspirational world today wants trains to move faster.
Correct.
In a fast-moving environment, with reliability of data transmission, the two parameters become very important. One is the speed at which communication is supported, and the latency that the user experiences. So one is whether if you to give you an analogy, if you're driving on a express highway, you would have experienced that your call quality deteriorates when your speed increases. That is because of the inherent limitation of the technology not to be able to support it at that speed.
That's right.
So if you want trains to travel at 100 kmph, 160 kmph, 300 kmph, you need the inherent underlying technology to be able to support
that.
5G kicks in there where 100 kmph support is available. So that is the first part. So connectivity at the speed of 100 kmph and above, you need 5G. That's the first part. Now comes the latency. You would not want connectivity where you would ask for or you query a website and the response is coming after some time, or it says timed out. You don't want that kind of a response. So that ensuring that response is within that is the latency requirement. So at least of the 5 pillars that 5G has, 2 of these pillars are very significant. So in a real ecosystem, 5G going forward, user satisfaction, mission critical applications, these 2 things 5G is very
Capable
important.
of.
So it is not not if, but only a matter of when that you move on to 5G, the enabling radio ecosystem. Coming to the next question of IoT. If you have that kind of enabling technology which can actually absorb bandwidths of that rate, support throughputs of that kind of rates, you would want a lot of sensors being there in the ground.
That's correct.
To not only to support operations, but also to monitor conditions. One of the most common thing that are already being started using is the CCTV. I consider them in the category of IoT because it's specific purpose-built device which does something, has very limited resources on board and very limited battery to function of its own.
Correct.
So if you do not have independent power, so these sensors eventually get qualified as IoT. So IoT again will become the eyes and ears, even for that matter, nose and tongue of the human being to what the real ecosystem is. You probably would not need a driver to see what is going on in front. And the analogy is again the autonomous cars that you've seen, Teslas of the world that you've seen. They're most easiest to be implemented on the railway tracks because on the road two can still cross each other. Here the ROW is very clear. So these will become the eyes, ears, essential sensors of.
You monitor the sensitive part of.
So if you are looking at something called autonomous train operations, which is IoT is a huge upside there. The amount of data that IoT generates, 5G supports, has to be processed somewhere for any kind of meaningful outcome or operations.
An actionable
output
that you get from it.
Who gets that? That is being driven by the compute and the logic in the compute, where AI and the ML come in. So all three have wonderful and very long-lasting upside to them in the way that they can transform rail ecosystem. Now, how you use them, where you use them is again routine train operations is one place you can use. You can use them in maintenance. You can use them in analytics, predictive, prescriptive, all kind of.
Right.
The entire spectrum is available to you to be utilized.
Correct.
Only thing is, business owners have to sit with technology providers or
Correct.
technology people who understand technology to develop a solution which is unique to the business case.
Business case of that particular
Generic
entity.
AI and
Yeah.
has no use case, at least in the operations.
Operational manner. I understand. Colonel, how you mentioned the importance of technology and how the technology has to come together. It's very important to really achieve the kind of growth and the speed that we are trying to aim. Now, talking about that, how quickly or how early do you think uh, when you imbibe a technology into any operational structure, it definitely opens up to a lot of risk, right? And that's where the cybersecurity comes in, especially in a country like India, where I mean, billions and trillions of data gets generated almost every day, if not every week. So, how early do you think a concept like cybersecurity or a compliance like cybersecurity should be integrated into a company's infrastructure design or into an entity's infrastructure design? Not really a company, you'd say.
If you ask me, or any technology or any cybersecurity enthusiast, the answer will be day -1. The day you start planning for a project, cybersecurity aspects, related aspects need to be
Has to be
factored
there.
in and should be considered as an essential planning parameter, which is called, which is something people love to call security by design. So starting at when you are making the first blueprint on the paper,
Making it a part of the DNA itself.
so get it there, which I fully subscribe to. There is no other alternative but this, especially if you're wanting to leverage next generation technologies or tools, as I love to call them, for your business operations. That's the first part of it. The second part of it, where the contradiction comes in, is because whenever a project that I plan initially, there are varying kind of digital infrastructure or digital infrastructure enablers, if I may like to call them, which have differential life. Some has life of a legacy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Some have a life of
Very-
IT, and some are very fragile. AI, ML, to see the way things have grown today, 2 years. How do you bring synchronization? Because as this, and each of them are interdependent technologies.
Yeah.
Interdependent in the sense one leverages on the power of other.
Other.
Each of them can exist in isolation, but one leverages on the power of
Right.
other. When one technology runs faster and the other runs slower, there will be attacks. A normal case, maybe if I have this was the concurrent case. If this guy moves forward, the total surface area is increased.
Correct.
So the attack surface will increase.
Yeah.
Risk will start evolving. Newer risk and threats will be visible. That is where the challenge starts. Now, what has happened is your security by design that you planned in the day of your planning has failed.
Correct.
Now you have to get into a role where you handle it the risk management way. So this attack surface increases my risk. Is this risk acceptable to me? If it is acceptable to me, I don't need to do anything. If it is not acceptable to me, I need to put in mitigation mechanisms in place so that I am able to minimize the impact of risk. More often than not, both security by design is forgotten and reduction of risk is forgotten, for the simple reason that a cybersecurity incident, unlike other IT environment in railway or many critical infrastructure environment, is a very low, very low probability and a very high impact incident.
Exactly. Yeah.
So in the communication, we had something called the impulse function. The cybersecurity is something akin to in this kind of ecosystem
It
is
is
an
prone
impulse
to
function.
that kind of a
So,
risk actually.
so now people say they always have this choice of saying, do I address the impulse function or do I just make it an acceptable risk?
Like a generic format of that.
So adopt it as the earliest, but keep reviewing it for your risk management. And impulse you should cater for, because the impulse impact is in terms of lives, national interests. So impulse you should care for.
Is massive. I think let's build on that threat perspective as well, right? Two very significant and key sectors in India. So railways definitely is there. At the same time, healthcare. So their infra has been, targeted in the geopolitics warfare, you can say, in the past or in recent past, right? Uh, since the kind of experience and kind of knowledge bring onto the podium, uh, how it is, do you think that it is impacting the country on a national level, uh, and let's say in context of railways or healthcare, whichever you want to touch base on?
This is a question that you have touched upon, but I'm surprised many of those who should be raising it are unwilling to touch. This is the most important question, not just for
Exactly.
railways and the healthcare sector. This is the most important question that the policymakers at the highest level should be seized
Absolutely.
of. For the simple reason that critical infrastructure, one by its name, is critical to the sovereign boundaries of any nation.
Any nation, yeah.
Second, who has interest in the critical infrastructure coming down? It has to be someone whose interest is getting the nation down.
Absolutely.
Who has these kind of resources? Because all these critical information infrastructure are very cost intensive. It's not easy to get one machine of, say, MRI machine in the healthcare, or say a point machine from an OEM outside to play around, because hackers are as good as the playground that they play in.
Right.
So if they don't have a playground, they'll not be able to do what.
Correct.
So you need a enabling ecosystem which provides you that playground. And second, the wherewithal to be able to bring it down. What I'm coming to is the biggest threat to the critical infrastructure is from state sponsored cyber attacks. And they're the only ones who are in there to stay for the invested for the longest time, till the time it is required to be brought, that infrastructure is to be brought down.
Indeed.
When you have to sustain for that long time, those kind of investments can be provided, those kind of infrastructure can be provided there. Now imagine an impact of, if I say, railway ecosystem. Supposing you have, well, let's take example of 1999, the Kargil operations. So I was fortunate enough to be part of that operations, and we were moved from Kalimpong to the northern sector where the action was going on. Imagine a situation where you are suffering reverses or not favorable outcomes on the border. I, with my train full of people, was supposed to be a reinforcement, and somewhere this train was stopped. Not because of physical rail infrastructure getting damaged, but because one signaling infrastructure was compromised to say it will remain red for next 8 hours.
Oh.
You can delay movement of reinforcements.
Exactly.
Today we boast of electrification of railways. If I bring down the electricity grid, trains don't move.
Absolutely.
What do you do then? So that is the kind of, and imagine the ramification that people will have to face when this kind of a thing happens, or a nation faces when this kind of a thing happens.
The level of threat is.
That is the. On the healthcare infrastructure part, we have had one very famous case recently. In fact, it has served as an awareness for need for cybersecurity, which was the AIMS case.
Yes.
It's very talked about in all circles. And I'm naming the organization because now it was known to everyone.
It was public, yeah.
So it was public.
Yeah.
Again, what was the intention? We have a case of our former Prime Minister Sri Lal Bahadur Shastri being assassinated outside, where you did not know what was the cause.
Exactly.
If I come to know a health vulnerability of someone through their medical records, which is in digitized form,
correct,
and if that person is of particular importance, can I exploit that at a third party, fourth party, neutral location? So that
if
is
you
the
want
kind.
to, you can.
So that is the kind of impact that the health data has.
Yeah.
Only few days back, you had me missing out on one of your important events where malware was injected in the airline operations.
Yeah.
It brought down 400 odd aircrafts delayed for the day.
Exactly.
So many people across if one aircraft has carrying capacity of 300, just imagine 1.2 lakh people stranded across the country.
And the impact it has on the operational side of things as well.
So what cannot be done through war because you can't go to war daily,
Yeah.
can be done through cyber operations. Chaos can be created. And chaos has a tendency to feed upon itself.
Right.
Chaos breeds chaos. When that momentum snowballs out of control and becomes a law and order situation and a national sovereignty,
fission kind of
you
a
don't come
impact.
to know. It is something which moves out, spins at a speed that you can't control
can't really control.
immediately. UPI stops functioning today, say for 8 hours.
There's a panic.
You're not used to carrying a wallet anymore.
The cash
So
is now out of your normal routine.
So the critical infrastructure protection, at least the cyber portion, is because I don't physically need to come here to bring it down. Sitting in any part of the world, I can do it. And I have my vested interest to bring you down, especially when you're the most rapidly growing economy, fourth largest economy. You don't have very many friends out there. There are more enemies than friends.
Really interesting take, Colonel. Now, I think if we have to move forward on this discussion, we did talk about the strategic evolution that the country has seen. We did speak about the threat perspective of that side as well, and to kind of ensure as minimal risk is there, or you're prone to it. Compliances are very important, right? But the other side of that coin is that there are many compliances, there are many frameworks, right? Which are of either you can call them compliance, you can call them governing acts around the IT and the cybersecurity topic or the domain, right? Now, going forward, what do you think that, firstly, what are their impacts? And having so many compliances, are they kind of on a good side or on a bad side for the infrastructure that we are trying to build?
So there is a very good word that is in vogue nowadays, Industry 4.0.
Right.
Our acts, regulations till now have been developed to that context of the business. As I told you, go back in the eras of 90s, you had a different telephone set, you had a different pager, and your different PC. So acts and regulations today are how to regulate the PC, how to regulate the pager, how to regulate the telephone set. In an era which is converged today, you need an act which is converged.
Exactly.
So if you have acts in isolation, you still have Telegraph Act has been repealed, but you have the new Telecom Act, which focuses on the telecom portion of it. You have the IT Act, which focuses on the IT portion of it. Right. And you have just now come up with something called DPDP. So which touches on the data portion part of it. Now, if you look at it, the data resides on this IT infrastructure, and that runs beneath the.
They're very much integrated.
If there is any semblance or any contradiction or even multi-interpretation kind of a scenario in this three layers, the intent of a regulation, the act is lost.
Exactly, yeah.
So there is a need to harmonize these acts, not in isolation, but in close cooperation, because they are dealt with three different ministries. The challenge is that. So there has to be an interministerial group or interministerial cooperation set up to be able to harmonize these acts. If you are able to do that, my next recommendation from there goes is what is called Regulations 4.0. And why I call Regulation 4.0 is, say you're talking of healthcare or payment systems, whichever way. So the act regulations around the payment systems are basically to look at the payment systems. Around healthcare, they're looking at the business interest of healthcare. In an era of digital delivery of services where all of these things are dependent on the underlying digital infrastructure. So when I was saying the underlying digital infrastructure, three acts need to be harmonized, and the rules that emanate thereof. This entire regulatory framework which is riding on that also needs to be harmonized.
Absolutely.
Or clear delimitation has to come in that I will look from here to here. From here to here, you look. There'll still be a gray zone or a thin line where it will be undefined.
Still working together.
But at least you would have got a single point of truth for each one of them. So my take on regulations and acts is there's a huge need of synchronizing all of them in a totally giving it a totally de novo look in the form of regulations 4.2.
So the quantity of compliances is not the issue, but the harmony among all of them is the
Thanks for bringing out compliance, because that was something that I moved out. This was the act and regulation part of it. Compliance are basically intended to ensure, they're basically a third party check
that's right.
that you are doing your things right.
Correct. Yeah.
So I am not against compliances, because tendency is if you are not checked, you might cross over a line,
Exactly.
or you might not put the enabling infrastructure in place. So I am for compliance, hugely for compliance. It is the periodicity of the compliance, the frequency of compliance, the sincerity of compliance, intention of compliance, and overlapping compliance among these 3, 4, 5 acts and regulations and rules. That again, once you have restructured the basic uh, enabling basic compliance structure in itself, the compliance will get restructured around it. Why are people becoming slightly chary about compliances? Is that they are bringing in avoidable, repeated fatigue costs on companies without achieving the desired outcome.
Achieving, yeah, exactly. They are not
So-
object driven, yeah.
So if it is objective driven,
Yeah.
then compliance. So maybe that compliance framework again, if you make the acts harmonized, the compliance framework automatically gets harmonized. Then nobody will be resenting against the
Correct.
compliances.
So having a common cerebro behind them is
Most important.
has to be the goal moving ahead. No, totally makes sense. I think the next, and I think one of the last questions of the session, Colonel, and it's very interesting as well, where we are trying to get some knowledge and benefit from the vast experience that you have in two main organizations which are very very large. One is the Indian Army, and the other where you work in the railway environment, right? Now there are many PSUs that struggle with kind of modernizing the legacy system which you just mentioned, right? Now they with organizations of such vast size, how do you push transformation within the organization, right? Because that's the most tough part of having any change or any development being done, right? So how does that happen? And then you are already exposed to two such large organizations of the Indian economy. So just give us some insight into that.
What I might say is, would be, I'll break it rather in two parts. Let
Please,
me say
yes.
it that way. The one is the organizational need. I, as an organization, know that I have to provide this service.
Right.
I'm providing this service, and in the process of providing service, what do I need? So the tools that I need, that I talked of, the tools are basically the technologies. The other is the marketplace. So there are multiple tools available in the marketplace. Uh, for me to travel from here to my residence, I need a vehicle.
Correct.
There's a Ferrari available. The Ferrari guy who's selling Ferrari would want me to go in the Ferrari, and the guy who is say on the other spectrum, hand carts which were there in Kolkata earlier, which have now been say abolished, he would want that I go with him.
Absolutely.
Now, what are the 2-3 things of consequence as an organization? My constraints, within how much time do I need to?
Right.
The distance that I need to cover. So basically, it is my delivery with the demand that I have. So if there is something in the market that expedites my delivery, meets the demand that I'm supposed to meet at a comparable cost, because then otherwise my bottom lines are getting hit.
And these are the
At a
checkpoints.
comparable cost, that is the benchmark to be adopting that technology. Now coming to the security related aspects to it. So those infrastructure which are critical, or what people otherwise like to call crown jewels,
Yeah.
To your business existence, and I have always been a proponent of this thought, that they should be kept at an air gap. Do not connect them. And there are a whole lot of counter theories which says air gap in itself is not safe. It is about the risk.
Yeah.
Attack surface, you minimize attack surface, you minimize risk. The probability of jumping across air gap or beach across air gap is that impulse function multiplied by 15 times vis-a-vis. So that is one big credible deterrence.
Right.
Then there is enabling infrastructure around these crown jewels, which you probably use for your business continuity or customer facing applications. These perforce, because these have to be exposed, the customer reachability has to be ensured. These have to be on internet, where you need to put this entire infrastructure related to cybersecurity, the technical infrastructure, both. It is the TTPs that people love to call. They have to be synchronized in line with the business use case, and we put there, because cost of disruption of service, and especially customer facing service, and especially for PSUs who actually touch the life of their customers, are the citizens of the country.
Absolutely.
Their customers are very rarely B2B. So if IOL goes down, all IOL pumps are down. There are hundreds of cars lines outside.
Exactly.
And as I said, critical infrastructure, whenever it is down, it will breed chaos, and chaos breeds upon itself.
Okay.
And it creates a national issue, which is
That's right. That's right.
So that is how my take on this is.
Beautifully taken. Before we let you go, Colonel, and this is a question I'm trying to add from my side itself. Rather than exploring the threat side of it, would like to understand the strategy and the opportunity side of things. Where, if you're comfortable, from your experience with the Indian Army, can you remember an instance where, when some new technology integration was done, which is still fresh in your memory, that this is going to be the game changer? Anything you'd like to share, which is not confidential as well?
It's not confidential,
Right.
In fact, I'll you asked for one, I'll give you two.
Thank you.
The first place after commissioning that I got posted to was a place called Kalimpong. And Kalimpong has to have frequently interaction down the hill at a place called Siliguri, which is about 60 kilometers from Kalimpong. And the technology that we used to use at that point in time was 2G wired technology. And if I had to speak from Kalimpong to Siliguri, it was virtually impossible. I had to yell on the top of my voice. And sometimes I felt, if the pitch at which I am yelling, probably the guy in Siliguri could hear me without that line. And on the line, it would still be, kya bola, phir se bolo. This was what was going on the line. When the digital transformation took place, or when the technology transformation took place, optical fiber cable, the classical aluminum core steel reinforced ACSR was what the long haul network cables that were used, was replaced by the optical fiber cable. The optical fiber cable, given the amount of bandwidth that it could carry, the data that it carried, leveraged upon this, and provide a very reliable media. And this obviously is the backbone even today. So this transition I got to witness somewhere around 2000. Yeah, around 2000 in the armed forces. This, I would say, is one of the most defining transition from wired copper-based or conductor-based wired materials to optical fiber cable.
Yeah.
And it's been almost 30 years now, and this still continues to be the backbone of it, and still supporting greater bandwidths. The second one is with respect to the sensitization or importance of cybersecurity, which end-to-end security is what people are talking today.
Right.
Or maybe BlackBerry days, people started talking end-to-end security. WhatsApp is a huge debate of end-to-end security. My first day in office was guarding a telephone, which was supposed to be end-to-end secure. So it was an analog transmitter with a digital scrambler, and obviously an encryptor through which the voice would go from one.
Wow.
And no matter who spoke on the other side, you would only get one digital kind of a voice output. So it was from the output on the other side, you could never make out who was speaking. So it was called something called the secure telephone, and it was manned with 3 people around it with arms, and an officer had to accompany it. So that was the level of sensitization of end-to-end security. When we came to say 2005-6, where cybersecurity level of awareness, obviously data networks had proliferated in the armed forces, and there was a need to sensitize people on the threats associated with cybersecurity. We took that way of saying, okay, please come put in a password. And that magician PC Sarkar would come out and say, this is your password displayed on. You were running tools behind it. That approach ended up scaring people than making them aware. And the result was people stopped using PCs. Something can happen.
Right.
I realized this in one of the courses where we were briefing to a formation commander senior who would go ahead and become senior officers, and one of them was my previous boss or a mentor in some form. So when he came, I said, today we are going to show you what cybersecurity can do. So he told me, oh, that same thing where you'll scare us that this is what can happen with my PC. That line somehow stuck to me. Fortunately for me, it stuck to another person who mattered, and we changed the approach of awareness.
Beautiful.
Where you stopped scaring people because of cybersecurity and started saying, this is more of a business enabler. If you don't do this, your business starts to suffer.
Correct.
We found a much better buy-in there.
That's
so
great.
These two.
Great. I'm really glad I got to add that question, Colonel, and thanks for being so open about it, sharing your experience. I think it was a great session. I think we can talk quite a bit more, which we would love to do in future, right? Where we take more time of yours. But for today, thanks for joining us. Thanks for sharing such valuable insights. I think it went really interesting. We did touch base on number of important aspects, and I think as a follow-up, we would love to dig deeper into that. Where we'll see if we can ask you a bit more confidential questions, where you can be a little choosy in how you want to answer them. But really, thanks, Colonel. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for giving us your time, and I think we had a great session. Right.
Thanks a lot. It's a pleasure being part of your podcast, and I'll be more than happy to be part of your future podcast. Confidential is a word that one can never breach. So maybe something more meaningful, something more engaging. Yes,
indeed.
I'll be more than happy.
I think meaningful is the right term here. We'll try to structure like that.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Colonel. Thanks for being with us.
Bye.